I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go.
Is it recording?
Oh, we're live right now.
We're live. All right, here we go.
Thanks, everybody, for listening in today. I'm extremely excited to welcome on today's guest. He's probably the strongest policy person that I've ever had on the podcast. He's got such a great business experience, but the thing that makes him most exciting is that if things go the way that we're hoping, he's going to be the next governor of Illinois. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Ted Dabrowski.
Thank you, Travis. Thanks for having me on.
How's life?
Appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, my pleasure. How you doing?
I'm good. It's an exciting world we live in.
So here we are. You've announced that you're running for governor. How did you get to this point? I mean, I can imagine that maybe it was a childhood dream of yours, or you start working on policy and you think maybe one day somebody should change that. But how does one go from this not being on their game board to it being the primal focus of what they're working on?
Yeah, I mean, it was never a dream. I haven't thought about this. Certainly not governor. And I've just been working in this field for 15 years now. I've been talking about the pension problems, the out-migration problems. I've written about them, researched them. I've talked to legislators. I've spoken to groups. And, it just got to the point where I was saying the same thing over and over again, but things were getting worse and worse. And nobody was doing anything about it. And, you've had some good people step in and try to lead. But the Democrats have controlled this place for a long time. Republicans have been complicit too, but Democrats have controlled supermajorities, and they refuse to do anything that makes, in my opinion, life better for everyday Illinoisans. They take care of the unions, they take care of the people that support them, but they don't take care of everyday Illinoisans. And I said, enough's enough. I either got to shut up or put up, and here I am.
Yeah, so we don't have to scratch our heads and ask what the issues are. Actually, it's funny. I was in Florida maybe a year and a half ago, and I'm in the checkout line, and I had my Cubs hat on. And this guy behind me said, "Oh, are you from Illinois?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, man, we used to be up there in Chicago, but gosh, between the property taxes and the schools, we got the heck out of there." So it's not like you don't have to do this big case study or task force to find, why is everybody leaving? Gosh, is it the weather? It's not a question. I mean, we know why. They tell us why.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. But, it's interesting because I went to Atlanta to go to a funeral, actually. And I went to go get a haircut. So I go in there and I sit down. And a nice black lady is going to cut my hair. And I said, "Where are you from?" She asked me where I was from. No. Yeah. She asked me where I was from. I said, "Illinois." She goes, "Oh, I'm from, where do they have the ketchup bottle?"
Heinz?
No.
Where do they make them?
No, the
Oh, they have a giant ketchup
I forget.
bottle somewhere.
Collinsville? I forget.
Collinsville?
Yeah, somewhere near down.
Okay, so if you're from Collinsville, don't think of this as we butchered your name. Think of it as we're giving you airtime on this illustrious podcast.
Or that I did a horrible job. And so she was a hairstylist, had a business, and she said that there was just no growth. It was getting stagnant, and she said she traveled to Atlanta and she'd been to, I think, like places like Houston. She said the community, the entrepreneurship communities, even for blacks there, were so vibrant. And she said, "I got to leave." And she left and she went to Atlanta. And she said she was just blossoming in everything. And she said she would never have that in where she was. And she thought about Chicago, but it just wasn't the same. And I've run into people in Florida, same thing. And you get tired of hearing it. And you get tired of Illinois being a butt of jokes, and it shouldn't be that way. I always say Illinois should be one of the fastest growing, most prosperous states in the country, and that's what we need to fight for.
Yeah, and I think that there's also this thing of it's our home, and we could leave. I got no problem with people that do leave. I mean, I got family all over the country that have left for various reasons, and I get it. I don't judge it. But one thing I love about you is, son of first-generation immigrants, Polish and Ecuadorian, and you've been all around the world for work. You've worked in foreign countries, in Europe and in Latin America, and you did your studies, your business studies in Philly at the Wharton School of Finance. And here you are, the opportunity to go anywhere, and you're choosing Illinois as a place where you want to plant your flag and say, enough's enough, because it's my home. Of course, there's better beaches other places, but you just abandon your home?
Yeah, and this is America, and I love this country, and we could talk about that. My parents coming here, but in Illinois in specific is where my parents immigrated to, and so this is where I can't help but feel these are my roots, and it's worth fighting for. And again, like you said, I don't begrudge people that leave. There's 49 other states. This is we're a competitive environment, and but why we're last, why we're losing people at the levels that we do. It just makes no sense. And the reason why, and the only reason why, is really bad politics, because everything else is still, we're still intact. We still have our farmland and our lake and our universities and our transportation hub, and O'Hare's doing well. But so why the hell are we losing all these people? We got to fix it.
And, I also appreciate that you could do anything, right? You could continue being the president of Wirepoints. You could go back into banking. You got all these options. But the thing that really got you off the couch was education. And I appreciate that because there's all these other things that matter a lot. I don't want to downplay them, right? Pensions is a huge deal. Economic growth is a huge deal. But I also think that, one day we're going to get to the pearly gates. And I think we're going to be judged on what did we do for the next generation and for children. And all these fiscal things are important, but the way that we treat kids and the way that we prepare them, what could possibly be more important than that? And so tell us a little bit about education and what got you fired up.
Well, I'd always looked at education. I started looking at education finance because we're spending so much money, and I was trying to figure out where all the money went. And so my first few years, I looked at finances and was appalled at how things were going. But it took me a while to finally look at the educational outcomes. And once I started looking at that, and I remember the big deal was when Lori Lightfoot in Chicago was making a big deal, 84% graduation rate. And I said, wow, that is really high. But then I said, but I know the stats. Most kids can't read. So I went and looked at the data from the State Board of Education, and it said just 26% of kids could read at grade level. So it's like, how do you get 84 and 26? Yeah, we can graduate them. If they can't read, who cares? So we wrote about it, got a lot of attention nationally. And a radio station from Decatur said, hey, Ted, will you come talk about that? I said, okay, yeah, sure. So I was getting on the radio and I prepped for the call. And I went to the Decatur numbers and I saw just 2% of black children in the third grade in Decatur public schools could read at grade level. And I said, that can't be true, just 2%.
Which is wild because the people that I'm sure represent inner city Decatur and our state at large say so vehemently that these are the people that they care about, right?
Yeah.
Minorities, low income, people that are down on their luck, they want to help them up. But here they are, they've had to control these major cities in our state for a generation, yet they're not being helped up. So at some point, it's like, let's open our eyes, guys, and realize that these people are using you as pawns.
Yeah, and so when I started putting that out, I started getting big pushback from Pritzker in particular. They said that it's not true. These are state numbers. It's his education. They're his numbers.
Right.
And so, and I always say that you can't fix a problem you don't acknowledge, right? Look, the blame goes far, far back. So, doesn't necessarily mean it has to be Pritzker's fault. But he's been there 7 years. He should join me, and he should embrace what I'm saying. Say, yeah, what the heck is going on? How can only 2% of kids read at grade level? And listen, in Rockford it was 6. I could just go throughout the state. Peoria, whatever, 8%. The numbers were so bad everywhere that I wanted to scream from the mountaintop. And luckily, we did this report, and the Wall Street Journal picked it up, and they did a great editorial. They took our work and just they highlighted it, and that really opened up people's eyes. And it's interesting to see now because I now read the paper, and people are using the right stats now. So now they may not talk about it forcefully, but they're at least saying 10% of kids can read or 15%, and so now we got everybody looking at it. Now we got to change the model into, hey, let's attack it.
Yeah, I've been using this Ronald Reagan quote a lot lately that he would say, don't be afraid to see what you see. Don't be afraid to open your eyes and take your head out of the sand and just see reality for what it is. Then you can make a decision, yeah, it's too big of a challenge, or I'm just not interested in facing it.
Right.
But don't kid yourself about what the challenge is. And that's what I like about you illuminating this challenge in our public schools is that you didn't blame anybody. Of course, we're not blaming our public school teachers that are saints, right? We're just saying there's a problem. And until we acknowledge there's a problem, how are we supposed to fix it?
And it's a system problem because there's a lot of good people. That there's a lot of teachers who really care, but many of them get there and go, wow, there's nothing I can do. I don't have power. And so really what I want to see is everybody obsess about it and then we really try to tackle it. But nobody's done anything about it for a long time, and this has been in play for over 50 years. So it's a huge opportunity, and I wish everybody would join us in this passion.
Yeah, one thing that we're obviously going to need to work on is name ID to get people familiar with Ted Dabrowski and who he is and what he stands for. But one place where I know for a fact that you have 100% name ID is at the governor's mansion. as that Pritzker mansion, because during his debate with Senator Bailey for the 2022 gubernatorial election, your numbers were cited, and the governor made this comment of, "Oh, the only person who believes that would be some carnival barker."
And he had to go to name calling, which is what he does.
And so you're the carnival barker. So I just think it's funny that you take out this acre of real estate in his mind. I know that he's thinking about you, and I know that he thinks that you're this guy that takes shots at him. But it's his own data that he's calling false.
Right, and he said they're wrong. It's just wrong, and that was a straight out untruth.
Yeah. So speaking of Governor Pritzker, obviously it's going to be the question probably that I expect that you'll face over the next several months, a year plus, is, you got this third-term governor, incumbent, trying to be relevant on the national stage, willing to waste his giant trust fund to keep the seat, to maintain power, and here you are trying to challenge him in a left-leaning state. So what gives you optimism that the job can be done?
I think, we've seen Illinois get more and more extreme across all kinds of policies. And, I always go back to the one metric that really matters. Are people dying to move here, or are they dying to leave? And you can't help but notice, like if you look at the Florida numbers over the last, 20 years, I mean, they've just ballooned, they've grown, I forget what the number is right now, but Texas and Florida have just grown by a couple million people. They're growing and we, since in the last 20 years, have lost 1.6 million people to outmigration. So if you take the people moving in, subtract the people moving out, we've lost 1.6 million. I mean, think about in Illinois with 1.6 million more people. And, there are only 3 states in the country to shrink from 2010 to 2020. Illinois, West Virginia, Mississippi. Think about that. And not to belittle West Virginia and Mississippi, but they're not growth states. They haven't been. So we're in the wrong...
And they don't have... our manufacturing footprint,
and our lake,
our rivers, our rail, the population of the city of Chicago, the world's best farm ground. I mean, we are really in this ecosystem where if you just get out of our own way, it could seriously fly.
Yeah. If we made it friendly. So business friendly and people friendly. So that's my measure. And so people are unhappy. And then since then, it's gotten worse because we have the illegal immigration problem. Many of the blacks felt just disenfranchised. We're spending billions of dollars on people who are not from here. So we're prioritizing illegal immigrants over our very own citizens. I think the Latinos weren't happy. We had the closures of schools, and we've seen if the schools were bad before COVID, much worse after all the closures. Our closures were extreme. And, trying to take away parental control was another. So you've got a lot of people saying, wow, what happened, right? And so I think people's eyes are open. And Trump, Trump getting 44% of the vote in Illinois without campaigning here. Forget whether you like Trump or not. The whole point was that he got votes from people you would never have expected him to get votes from, some blacks, Hispanics. Right. And so the game's open. And, and Pritzker's now, he wants to be a third termer. He's saying he wants to finally focus on property taxes. Come on, it's one of the biggest problems we have. And he didn't, not only did he not fix it, he's made it worse. We have much higher property taxes. So I think it's open. This, he doubled the gas tax. That makes a lot of people, irate. Yeah. So there's many things in the schools and jobs. Look, this is a very important point. People need jobs for meaning. People need jobs to pay their bills. People need higher wages to grow. Since Governor Pritzker took office, if you look at the census data and the Bureau of Economic Statistics, we are the 4th worst growing economy in his 7 years. Wow. 4th worst. Yeah. And not only are we're like stagnant, and if you compare the high growth states, they're growing at 3, 4, and 5 times our rate over 7 years. Do you know what that means to people? I mean, you're talking about wealth and people being able to invest in their homes or their education for their kids, all kinds of stuff. But we're stagnant, and that's why people leave. You put those property taxes with no growth opportunities or job opportunities or limited job opportunities, people say, hey, I'm going to go check out Indiana. I'm going to go check out Tennessee. And they do it.
Yeah, well, and one thing I think is super interesting about you is, you mentioned the large Hispanic population we have here. A lot of people don't know it's 20% of the state's population. It's huge. The second largest demographic, of course, behind white. And you're a fluent Spanish speaker. And that's not to say that all of a sudden we're going to get this wave of 20% of the population that's going to support us. But of course, it should mean that you can relate to people and quite literally speak their language in a lot of ways. Plus, when I think about Hispanic people, the things that pop into my mind are hardworking, family-oriented, faith-based people. And if that's not the blueprint for the Republican Party, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, and I lived in Ecuador from when I was 3 years old to 6 years old. So a lot of my things that are in my head were some of the first things I saw was Ecuador. It's a poor country. It's a beautiful country. But you talk about tough times, lack of opportunity. It's a tough place. And then I lived in Mexico for 6 years. So I worked there, and competed against other banks and other industries and all that. So I have a good feel for the Hispanic community. But you're right. I mean, they want the same things that everybody else wants. They want good schools, safe streets, and just work opportunity. They're hard workers. They're entrepreneurial, and we should make sure that we're just remove all the barriers so they can be entrepreneurs. That's what they're good at.
Yeah. Well, one thing that gives me optimism about our potential to win the governor's race is that, I think that the Democrats have done a really, really good job of lulling Illinoisans into thinking that this is a blue state. And the reality is that we know that it's not. The last two elections, Governor Pritzker and President candidate Kamala Harris both got 54% of the vote. I mean, they have set the ceiling that they both got 54%. People aren't willing to go beyond that.
Right. They're not at 60 or 70%, right? It's 54.
California, their governor wins 60-40 Dem. Massachusetts, 65-35 Dem. Here, 54-46. I mean, if you were in a room full of people and it was 100 people and 54 of them raised their hand, you'd say it's about half.
Pretty even,
you wouldn't say, we better bend the knee to the 54%. No, you'd say it's about 50-50. So that's number one, is that it's really not as out of reach. They can, and by the way, we talk about gerrymander maps a lot. When you have the pen, you can draw maps into your favor. That's why they've got 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. But when it's a statewide race, maps don't matter. It's just the state. You can't cheat. So that gives me a lot of optimism. And then on top of that, a lot of people, I don't think really anybody knows this, that it was down ballot in our 15 closest House races for Illinois House Representatives candidates. The Republican candidate outpaced President Trump in every single one of those races by as much as 8%. So you think, now if it went the other way and President Trump's outperforming all of our candidates, you'd say, oh man, well, he tightened the gap, but that's just because it's Trump. We underperformed him on the other races. That's not that case. It's been proven by those races that the right candidate can even outperform that 54% threshold that we've seen in the last two races. So that's number two. 54% their ceiling. 15 races we outperformed the Democrats. And then the next one is thinking about the fact that J.B. Pritzker outspent Senator Darren Bailey by a 15-1 margin. I mean, that's just insurmountable. That's like saying every single dollar I spend, you spend 15. I mean, you just can't compete. And obviously, we don't expect that you're going to outspend, billionaire Governor Pritzker. But man, if we can just narrow that to 5-1, 4-1, 3-1, to the point where we're not getting drowned out. And also there's diminishing return, right? I mean, your first $1 million that you spend as a candidate is much more important than your $151st million. And he's just going to go gangbusters. And I'd love to see him spend his family fortune to lose. That would be just the coup d'etat.
Yeah. And the other big thing that we haven't mentioned is, he's running for a third term, and we know that third terms aren't successful pretty much. But the other thing is, he's running for governor, but at the same time, he's going to be running. It seems like all indications that he's running for president as well. So, right. I mean, running for a third term, trying to do things that he should have done in his first two terms, and he's not even going to be focused. He already went to North Carolina recently, so he's already on that campaign trail. And, he's gunning for what looks like the far left of in the primary. Which means that he's not going to pass the kind of reforms we need in Illinois, right? We need these lower taxes. We need the reforms on spending, and he can't do that because those would be, go against his push to the left.
Yeah, so that's the 800-pound gorilla, and I think it's going to be the question. But I also don't want to talk about it a lot because anybody with a Facebook page or a Twitter profile can be a complainer. And the reason I'm really drawn to you is because you're not a complainer. You're a solutions-based kind of oriented guy. So my next question is, let's say that there's King Dabrowski, right? Ted Dabrowski's in control of everything, and you've got all these issues that you're passionate about. If there was one that you could just kind of peel off and say, this is really important to me, and I've got a solution that I think if we could just get people on board, there would be a really quality fix of something that could be done in fairly short measure.
Yeah, well, I think we got four big problems. And obviously, you only asked me for one, so I'd have to pick one, right?
You're overperforming.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the real structural problem we have is that we got the biggest debt in the country. So, Fitch, which is one of the rating agencies, added up all the pension debt recently, and the number one state that sticks out like a sore thumb is Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
$172 billion in unfunded pension debts. $172 billion in future tax hikes. And that's only the state level. We're not talking about Chicago. We're not talking about all the local funds. Mm-hmm. So it's massive. And Warren Buffett said it best. He goes, if I'm looking at a state like Illinois and I see all those debts, I will never put my factory in Illinois because they'll be coming after me for 30 to 40 years with massive tax hikes. And I'll never be able to be profitable. So he says, I'm going somewhere else. And I think you're seeing that. You're seeing our cities. You're seeing it in Peoria. You're seeing it in Danville. All over the place. These pensions are just eating into the budgets of our cities. So you have to fix that. And so if you ask me the number one problem from the one that's just going to keep bleeding us dry, I'd go after pensions. But education really is where I'd really like to go because we're talking future and kids. But so pensions. We should immediately, starting tomorrow, stop digging the hole and move to 401k plans. Just like everybody in the private sector has. Just make our public servants equal with what ordinary people have, and that's a good old fashioned 401k. Because we can't keep doing these pensions. They're too big, they're too expensive, and too complex.
Yeah, and I would say even to the workers, the recipients, the people entering the workforce, I don't think that you're suggesting that we just give them a bare bones 401k. I mean, it's a retirement. There can be some 401k matching, but to me, the beauty of a 401k is that the cost is endured in the current year. You know it. We're saying this year, Ted, on your 401k, we're going to give you $10,000 to match your $10,000. As opposed to, Ted, you're going to work this year and you're going to give us $1,000, and then we're going to try to guess how long you live and how much we're going to pay you while you live. And oh, by the way, we can come back in the future and renegotiate your COLA and renegotiate your spiking. And you got these politicians who will mismanage it, so you really don't know what your retirement is. And they're going to say, we'll make this deal today, and then I'm going to be dead in 20 years, and it's going to be somebody else's problem. The beauty of a 401k is you make it that person's problem, and that year you make a deal. And then if you have financial problems down the road, then you say, hey, we're not going to be doing the $10,000 match anymore. I mean, you give people a good 401k to compete with the private sector. I had a matching program when I was at Caterpillar. It was managed by Caterpillar, no cost to me. But this whole deal of we're going to make a deal and we don't really even know what the deal is, and the deal is open-ended, and your powerful union can come back and get more from us later. It's just a fool's errand.
And I argue, if I were a government worker, and think about the portability too. If you want to leave, you just take your 401k and you move. If you're moving to a state, you go. You got your money. You don't have to wait around and see what happens in Illinois. The biggest secret, so here's the other thing I would do immediately if I were king. So in the state university.
Well, hey, I just want to be clear because President Trump was going to be dictator on day one, and now we just got a soundbite of what Ted's going to do when he's king. So,
and I'm giving people options.
Right.
The state university retirement system in 1998, Senator Bob Madigan, so no relation.
Okay.
He created a optional, like a 401k plan for university workers. So they can opt out. They don't have to go into the pension. They can take the 401k. And every year for the last 20 years, more, you have about 10 to 20% of state university workers pick the 401k. So it's not like we already have that. In Illinois, we have it. And what we should do is just take it, copy, paste, and give it to everybody. And it's been working. And I've met a lot of the guys that have it, and they're happy, guys, gals. They're happy with it because it's their money. They control it. It's their account. Yeah. They don't have to worry about these pension things and corrupt politicians and all that. It's their savings.
Yeah. So I actually had that bill that was a 401k option for new hires, and I ran into all sorts of challenges against all sorts of public sector unions about how dare you even mention a 401k. But here's the deal: it's good for the people that you represent because I'm just giving them an option. They can choose to not take it. I'm giving them a smorgasbord of things to choose from, and you're telling the people that you represent, no, I'm not going to give you more choice in your retirement programs. And think about if you want to become a teacher and maybe you're teaching first graders and you want to do that for maybe 20 years, but gosh, you get to age 40 or 45 and you're like, man, I'm just worn out from chasing around 7-year-olds all day. But you're 10 years away from vesting, you're 20 years away from vesting into your pension. So now you got these golden handcuffs.
Right.
As opposed to if you said, oh, I wanted to elect into this 401k option because I love educating, but I know that somewhere down the road I'm going to start a family, or I want to do something else, or I want to become a tutor. It's just to give them more control over their retirement.
Yeah, and then the other big thing, so then, I could keep going on pensions, but, if you look at where I live up in the Wilmette area, and the superintendents there, their salaries get to be $300,000 and $400,000 when they finish. So they start with a $300,000 pension. That $300,000 pension grows at 3% every year. So next thing you know, in 25 years, it becomes $600,000, right? It doubles because of the 3% compounding for 25 years. State taxpayers are the ones who pay for pensions. It comes out of your state income taxes. So you got people in Peoria having to pay high taxes so that you can pay the Wilmette ex-superintendent his $450,000 pension. It makes no sense, right? It doesn't make any sense for anybody. So these are the kind of things you have to change. And you have to be willing to talk about them. These are not easy things to talk about. Governments have made promises, and these promises don't make sense. We have to attack them and fix them.
Yeah, and I think the really optimistic thing is knowing that the promise isn't that everything's going to get fixed immediately or even in short order. That's what's so hard about having $180 billion in pension debt and the worst credit rating in the country. Oh, right. By the way, Governor Pritzker will say he's raised it 3 credit rating upgrades since he's been governor. Well, he got a giant pile of federal money, and he doesn't say the other part, that it's still the worst.
It's still the worst,
nation.
Right? Because everybody else got piles of money moved up too.
Up 3, but it's still the worst.
Right.
So anyway, it's not an overnight fix. We got a mountain of debt that we got to start paying down, but it is fixable over the long term.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, and just a final comment. We need to take one big action, and I think moving to 401ks for all new workers starting tomorrow would send the action to the rest of the country. Finally, Illinois is doing something about their pensions. I'll start to consider Illinois as an investment again, right? Because when we've talked about it a lot. When we lose Citadel to Florida, when we lose the Caterpillar headquarters, the Boeing headquarters, the Tyson Food headquarters, the Guggenheim Capital, Morton. Yeah. I mean, those are amazing, big, powerful names. How could they not want to stay in Illinois, right? You would think that that's like, but they've left. And there's a reason for that. They're not comfortable. We're not persuasive anymore. And so things like changing the pension, even if it's not the big fix, but it's the one moving to 401ks, suddenly maybe we're back on the map as, hell, they're finally doing something about their problems.
Yeah, gosh.
And it changes the mood, changes the whole thinking.
And messaging is important, and it's signifying that Illinois is open for business, because right now we're telling business that you're not welcome here. There was this deal that I'm really going from memory this spring where they were talking about having a new energy bill because people are just getting crippled on their power costs. Mm-hmm. And so there was a deal in there where it was like these companies were trying to come to Illinois and negotiate lower power rates. And the message from the governor was, well, if you want that, just bring your own power. It's like, well, why don't you just go tell me to kick rocks? I mean, to bring my own power when I can go to 49 other states that are going to try to compete for my business to help me have affordable power. Oh, and by the way, for high wage pay manufacturing, power is a pretty large portion of their income statement.
You bring up a word that's so important, and it doesn't exist in Illinois. It's competition. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe that states compete. And again, some people try to say, "Oh, compete." It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we should.
Word,
we should compete, and we should. States that compete make themselves better, right? We compete to be better, and we are more efficient. Get rid of the fat. Get rid of the bad taxes. We should be competing, and with high growth, guess what you get? More tax revenues.
Yeah.
But you get it because you're growing,
right?
Not because you are squeezing the rates higher and higher and higher. That's the wrong way to get tax revenues. The real way to get tax revenues is what Texas and Florida are doing. Inviting everybody in, grow the business, grow your sales, pay more taxes, and boom.
Yeah, and I said I was going to try to stop talking about him, so I'll just say an extremely wealthy hotel heir said earlier this spring, we have record revenue here in Illinois. Well, when you have record revenue because you're increasing taxes, it's not a good thing. Record revenue is a good thing for a business who's achieving new sales and serving their customers. Record revenue for a state means congratulations, you just took more money out of my pocket than you ever have before.
Yeah, Milton Friedman said if you want to know how a government is doing, look at their spending. And if we keep having record spending, we keep having record tax revenues. And tax revenues are, and it's not because, and I said it earlier, it's not because we're growing dynamically, right? If we were growing dynamically, I don't think anybody would be complaining. Mm-hmm. It's just that we have record revenues, no growth. I mean, literally, it's almost no growth. When you adjust for inflation, obviously when you adjust for inflation, there's hardly any growth.
Yeah. I was at a conference last week, and Stephen Moore was there, who's an economic advisor to the White House, and he had these really great charts, and they just highlight how much easier the math gets when you're growing. And it was a chart about our federal deficit, and if we grow at 1%, our spending hangs a noose around our neck. If we grow at 2%, our deficit goes down. If we grow at 3%, our deficit just starts to crater as a percentage of GDP because you're outgrowing it so well. And so here in the state of Illinois, we do have these big problems of our pension costs, and we're trying to pay down debt and trying to fix our roads. And the reality is, if we start growing, we can have more robust revenues just as a function of our economy growing. We can have higher revenues and tax cuts, as opposed to now the only way that we get higher revenues is with tax increases. Hikes, but these other states, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, they're all cutting their taxes.
They're cutting taxes, and Florida's spitting out so much money that the debts are just going way down. Yeah, it's the other. Let me just point out the other why we have to be more obsessed about this, because not only are our debts continuing to grow, but our population is at best flat, but it's been shrinking, right? The only reason it rose right now is because of illegal immigration. Right. Our population's down. So here's the problem you have. You have the debts keep growing because there's nothing to stop them from growing. We have these pension contracts and protections, and our population's shrinking. And it's getting poor. I'll talk about that in a minute. So debts divided by fewer people,
right?
It means tax hikes
Numerator,
again.
denominator.
Yeah,
pretty easy.
You're in a problem. And if you look at the IRS data, which we've looked at a lot, the people we lose to other states make about, I forget the number now, but 50,000 more than the people we gain from other states. So we bleed wealth every time we lose a person net. We're hurting.
Yeah. Well, I've talked a lot about my dream of a day in Illinois where my kids are growing up and they're out of the house and they say, "Dad, why would I go to Texas, Tennessee, or Florida? I live in Illinois. I live in one of the top states in the country." And it's exciting for me to think about because I'm probably 20 years away from my kids being at that point. I don't even have any. My bride-to-be isn't pregnant. I'm not breaking news here or anything. But that's a goal where you can get your arms around, of saying, okay, for the next generation, we're going to have Illinois in a situation where we're competitive, because it's taken us decades to climb into this mess. It's going to take us time to climb out. But I'm really optimistic, excited, engaged, energized about a Ted Dabrowski candidacy and a Ted Dabrowski administration, because we've been proven by the last 7 years of the Pritzker administration that he ain't the guy that's going to make that dream come true for my kids. A guy like you is the guy, and I'm all in for you.
Yeah, I'm going to say one thing about the hotel air. He's a really good cheerleader of Illinois, but when he's speaking, he's not telling the truth, right? Sure. And so, what we need is, and you said it's going to take a long time to fix things, but we need to send the signal that we're fixing things, and people will give us they'll give us the room. They know it's going to take time, but if they see the action, they'll come in. But if they don't see any action, they've seen no action, right? As a matter of fact, and we've talked about it, the legislature just passed a pension sweetener for Chicago police and fire. And now that they got it, the CTU is going to want one, and AFSCME is going to want one. And so that means our debts are even going higher. Well, I should say this: the bill is on Pritzker's desk. He hasn't signed it yet. But we're still in a mode where we're still making things worse rather than making things better.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Ted. I'm all in for you. I'm really excited for people to continue to hear about you and learn about you and see you as you come into their county for the fair or whatever over the next several months. So thank you so much for your service.
It's exciting. And thank you. Well, thank you for what you do. You're the one that's been there doing it, and your family as well. So
yeah. Well, hey, Dabrowski 26. Let's get it done.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks. I'm Travis Weaver, and you are listening to the Good People Project.